My name is Jackie Reynolds, 34 years old, former Chief Product Officer at TechVista Innovations. 9 years building their flagship security platform only to watch the CEO hand my division to his unqualified niece, Diana. When my access card failed that Monday morning, I knew exactly what was happening. What they never realized was that my contract had a special investor protection clause. The $55 million Series D funding their survival depended on had one critical condition they were about to violate. Drop a comment where you are watching from and hit that subscribe button as I explain how corporate nepotism destroyed a once promising company. I grew up in a small manufacturing town in Wisconsin, where career options were limited to either the local factory or retail jobs. My parents worked incredibly hard, but struggled financially. I was the first person in my family to attend college, working 2 part-time jobs while pursuing my computer science degree at Midwest State University. Student loans covered tuition, but everything else came from waiting tables and weekend tech support gigs. After graduation, I applied to 67 companies before TechVista Innovations offered me a junior developer position. The company was still relatively small, then occupying just 1 floor in a modest office building downtown. CEO Thomas Richards was a visionary leader who had built the company from nothing, and I admired his practical, no-nonsense approach to business. On my first day, the office manager Alicia Cooper showed me around. The space was nothing fancy, just open-plan desks with outdated computers and mismatched furniture, but there was an energy about the place that felt right. Everyone seemed genuinely excited about the work they were doing. "We run lean, but we compensate with passion," Alicia explained with a smile. "Thomas believes in investing in people rather than fancy chairs." My team consisted of 6 developers led by Ryan Parker, a brilliant engineer with a patient teaching style. Working alongside me were Samantha Wright, Eric Thompson, and Zachary Bennett. While most of them were welcoming, I quickly realized I had to work twice as hard to prove myself as the only woman on the technical team. During my 3rd month, the company faced a critical server meltdown during a product demo for our biggest potential client. The entire engineering team was scrambling, unable to identify the source of the crash. While everyone focused on the most obvious systems, I noticed a pattern in the error logs that pointed to a rarely used authentication module. Working through lunch and into the evening, I isolated and fixed the issue while the senior developers were still debating possible causes. Thomas himself came to my desk the next morning. "Jackie, Ryan tells me you saved our North Star presentation yesterday," he said, leaning against my desk. "That contract represents 30% of our projected annual revenue. How did you spot what everyone else missed?" I explained my analytical process, expecting him to simply say thanks and move on. Instead, he pulled up a chair. "Tell me more about your background," he said. That conversation lasted nearly an hour. Thomas had come from a similar working-class background and recognized the hunger and determination that drove me. By the end of our talk, he had assigned me to work directly on our core security architecture, a significant promotion for someone only 3 months into the job. Within 2 years, I had developed our proprietary SecureLink protocol that revolutionized how our systems managed encrypted data transfers. The innovation cut processing overhead by 68%, while actually strengthening security, something our competitors claimed was impossible. Thomas promoted me to team lead, making me the youngest person to hold the position in company history. "Some people might question promoting someone with your limited experience," Thomas told me during my review, "but I judge people by results, not years on their resume." The company grew rapidly over the next few years, expanding to 3 full floors in our building and opening satellite offices in Denver and Atlanta. Our client list included Fortune 500 companies and government agencies. My security protocol became the foundation for every product in our portfolio, driving annual recurring revenue from $12 million to over $70 million. As we expanded, I built my own team of developers who shared my vision for elegant, efficient security solutions. Daniel Williams, a database architecture specialist, became my right hand. Lisa Martinez joined us from a competitor and brought valuable enterprise experience. Jason Reynolds, no relation to me despite the shared surname, came straight from graduate school with brilliant theoretical knowledge that I helped channel into practical applications. Thomas always made sure I received proper credit for my innovations. When industry publications wanted to feature our technology, he insisted I be the one giving interviews. He nominated me for the Emerging Tech Leaders Award, which I won in my 5th year with the company. The trophy still sits on my bookshelf at home, a reminder of what genuine leadership looks like. The company culture during those years was something special. We worked hard, often staying late to solve difficult problems, but it never felt exploitative. We celebrated wins together, with Thomas ordering champagne when we landed major clients. Holiday parties were legendary, with Thomas knowing every employee by name and something about their personal life. I remember one particularly meaningful moment during a company retreat in the mountains. We had spent the day in strategy sessions, and in the evening, Thomas asked each department head to share their vision for the future. When my turn came, I outlined an ambitious security framework that would put us years ahead of competitors. "That sounds impossible," one of the sales directors commented. "So did everything else Jackie has accomplished." Thomas responded without hesitation. "If she says it can be done, I believe her." That vote of confidence empowered me to push boundaries even further. Within 6 months, my team had developed a prototype that exceeded even my ambitious projections. As our success grew, so did my personal stability. I paid off my student loans, bought my first home in a nice neighborhood, and finally felt financially secure. The company went through several rounds of funding, each time increasing our valuation. Through performance bonuses and equity grants, I built savings that would have made my parents gasp in disbelief. Everything changed the day we received a company-wide email announcing that Diana Richards Thomas's niece would be joining Tech Vista as Executive Vice President of Innovation. The message emphasized her MBA from Wharton and previous experience at a consulting firm, but notably absent was any mention of technical expertise. "This is a natural evolution for our growing organization," Thomas wrote in the announcement. "Diana brings fresh perspectives that will help guide us through our next phase of growth." I remember staring at that email for a long time, an uneasy feeling settling in my stomach. Up until that point, every leadership appointment had been based on merit and proven contribution to the company. This was our first encounter with nepotism, and something told me it would not be the last. Diana Richards made quite the entrance on her first day. While most of us typically wore business casual attire, she arrived in a tailored designer suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Her blonde hair was styled in a perfect bob diamond earrings, caught the light as she moved, and her manicure looked fresh from the salon that morning. Thomas gathered everyone in the main conference room for her introduction. Diana stood confidently at the front, scanning the room with calculated interest. When she spoke, her voice carried the polished inflection of someone who had attended expensive private schools their entire life. "I am thrilled to join the Tech Vista family," she began, emphasizing the word family with a meaningful glance toward her uncle. While reviewing company operations, I identified several opportunities for modernization and strategic realignment. My experience at Wellington Consulting has prepared me to bring best practices that will elevate Tech Vista to the next level of corporate excellence. Her 20-minute speech contained an impressive array of business jargon, but surprisingly little substance. She used phrases like synergistic opportunities and vertical integration strategies, without specifying what any of it meant for our actual products or customers. After the meeting, Thomas brought Diana to my department for introductions. When we shook hands, her grip was surprisingly firm, almost aggressive, but her smile never reached her eyes. "Jackie is our security genius," Thomas explained. "Her protocols are the backbone of everything we do." "Fascinating," Diana replied, though her tone suggested anything but genuine interest. "I look forward to learning more about your technical contribution. Perhaps you can simplify it for me. I find engineers often get too deep in the weeds when explaining things." Our first one-on-one meeting came the following week. I had prepared detailed slides explaining our security architecture and upcoming development roadmap. Within 5 minutes, Diana was checking her phone. "This is all very interesting," she interrupted, "but let us focus on the big picture. How can we accelerate development cycles?" Wellington achieved 30% efficiency improvements through agile transformation initiatives. "Our development process is already optimized for our specific security requirements," I explained. "Certain testing protocols cannot be rushed without compromising integrity." Diana made a dismissive gesture. "Every process can be optimized, I am bringing in some colleagues from my Wellington days as consultants to assess operational efficiency. The consultants arrived the next week, a team of 5 young MBA graduates with matching blue suits and identical leather portfolios. They scheduled back-to-back interviews with every department head and spent hours observing workflow. None of them had any background in cybersecurity or software development, yet they confidently made recommendations about how we should restructure our processes. 2 weeks later, Diana presented their findings at the executive meeting. The consultants recommended a complete reorganization of development teams, implementation of new reporting structures, and adoption of a project management framework entirely unsuited to security development. These changes will streamline decision-making and create clear accountability metrics, Diana concluded, clicking to her final slide that showed projected cost savings. I raised my hand. These recommendations overlook critical security validation steps that protect our intellectual property and ensure client data integrity. Removing those safeguards would introduce significant vulnerability risks. Diana's smile tightened. The recommendations come from top industry experts, Jackie. Perhaps this resistance stems from comfort with the status quo rather than objective evaluation of efficiency opportunities. That evening, Thomas hosted a dinner for the executive team at an upscale restaurant downtown. Diana sat at his right hand and dominated the conversation repeatedly, steering discussion toward her transformation vision. Each time I attempted to raise concerns about security implications, Diana would either talk over me or redirect the conversation. "You seem very attached to your current methodologies, Jackie," she commented during dessert, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Innovation requires embracing change, not clinging to established procedures." Over the next few weeks, I watched with growing concern as Diana systematically restructured the company. New approval processes required 3 signatures for decisions I previously made independently. Mandatory daily status meetings ate up productive coding time. Arbitrary deadlines were imposed on security testing that had always been allowed appropriate time for thoroughness. Despite these challenges, I made genuine attempts to help Diana understand our technology and company culture. I invited her to developer demonstrations, created simplified explanations of our security architecture, and proposed compromise solutions that would achieve efficiency while maintaining security integrity. "I appreciate the effort, Jackie," she said after one such presentation, "but I think you are overthinking this. Business optimization is my area of expertise. Your role is to implement the technical aspects of our new strategic direction." During this period, I noticed Diana bringing in more of her people. Harold Morgan joined as Chief Strategy Officer, Grace Williams as Marketing Director, and Peter Reynolds as Operations Manager. All were former Wellington colleagues with no technology background, yet all were placed in positions overseeing technical functions. Edward Wilson, our veteran systems architect, who had been with the company since its founding, invited me for coffee off-site one afternoon. "Be careful around Diana," he warned once we were seated in a cafe 2 blocks from the office. "I have a friend at Clearpoint Industries where she worked briefly before Wellington. She was appointed to a similar role there also through family connections. Within 6 months, she had replaced most of the original leadership team with her own people. The company lost several major contracts due to service disruptions during the transition. Thomas would never allow that here," I said, though with less confidence than I intended. Edward gave me a sad smile. "Thomas is approaching retirement age. Word is, he is gradually stepping back from daily operations. Diana is positioning herself as his successor." Returning to the office, I found an email notification that my proposal for our next-generation security framework had been placed under strategic review. The project had previously received preliminary approval from Thomas and had already been allocated resources in our quarterly planning. When I checked our project management system to update some technical specifications, I discovered my administrative access had been downgraded. A help desk ticket to IT returned a cryptic response. "Access level adjustments implemented as per executive directive. Please contact Diana Richards with any concerns." More alarming was the gradual reassignment of my team members to other projects. Lisa Martinez was suddenly transferred to the new Digital Transformation Task Force, reporting directly to Harold Morgan. Jason Reynolds was moved to special projects under Diana's supervision. When I questioned these moves, I received vague explanations about resource optimization and strategic alignment. The final blow came during a company-wide announcement, where Diana unveiled the creation of a new Advanced Security Innovation Division headed by Philip Anderson, another former Wellington consultant with a marketing background rather than security expertise. The division's charter exactly duplicated the functions of my department, but notably excluded me or any mention of the SecureLink protocol that powered our products. Looking around the room during that announcement, I caught Thomas checking his phone, seemingly disengaged from the presentation. The uncle who had once been my greatest advocate now appeared to have handed the reins to his niece without question or oversight. As applause followed Diana's announcement, I remained seated, a sense of dread settling over me, as I realized my days at Tech Vista were likely numbered. The weeks following the creation of the Advanced Security Innovation Division marked the beginning of a systematic effort to isolate me within the company I had helped build. My attempts to schedule meetings with Diana were consistently met with last-minute cancellations or rescheduling. When meetings did occur, they were rushed affairs where Diana would check her watch repeatedly, claiming urgent matters required her attention elsewhere. "I only have 5 minutes" became her standard greeting, regardless of the complexity of the issues I needed to discuss. The stress began affecting my health. I started experiencing persistent headaches and found myself lying awake at night, mentally replaying conversations and second-guessing decisions. For the first time in my career, I kept a bottle of antacids in my desk drawer, reaching for them multiple times throughout the day as anxiety gnawed at my stomach. After 3 consecutive weeks of being sidelined in decisions that directly affected my department, I finally secured 15 minutes on Diana's calendar to address my concerns directly. I arrived with a concise list of specific examples and their negative impact on our product development timeline. "I feel like I am being intentionally excluded from strategic discussions that fall under my area of expertise," I stated, maintaining professional composure despite my frustration. Diana leaned back in her leather chair, perfectly manicured fingers steepled under her chin. "Jackie, I think you might be imagining slights where none exist. We are simply modernizing our organizational structure to match industry standards. Moving my entire security team to report through Philip, someone with no security background, is not modernization. It is deliberate restructuring that undermines 9 years of established expertise." Her expression hardened momentarily, before shifting back to a practiced smile. "Perhaps you are resistant to change. Successful organizations must evolve continually. The defensive posture you are taking suggests an emotional attachment to processes rather than objective business evaluation." Each attempt to provide specific examples was met with similar gaslighting responses that questioned my perception or emotional state rather than addressing the substance of my concerns. The isolation extended beyond Diana's office. During the weekly executive meeting, my update on critical security patches was allocated 3 minutes, while Philip was given 20 minutes to present a theoretical framework for security that largely plagiarized my earlier work. When I attempted to correct technical inaccuracies in his presentation, Diana smoothly interjected. "Let us stay high level for now. We can address technical details offline." Those offline discussions never materialized. The social dynamics within the company shifted noticeably. Conversations in the break room would stop abruptly when I entered. Colleagues who previously sought my input on technical matters now routed their questions through Philip or Diana's other appointees. Lunch invitations ceased, and I found myself eating alone at my desk most days, scanning industry news while trying to ignore the growing knot of anxiety in my chest. Samantha Wright, a senior developer I had worked with for years, caught me in the parking garage one evening. "Jackie, be careful," she whispered, glancing around to ensure we were alone. "Diana has been asking strange questions about your code documentation and system access protocols. There are rumors of a major restructuring coming, and your name is mentioned specifically." "Has Thomas said anything about this?" I asked. Samantha shook her head. "He is rarely in the office anymore. Diana runs all the executive meetings now." The following week, I discovered that 3 projects under my supervision had been reassigned without my knowledge. The notification came via automated email from the project management system rather than direct communication. When I questioned my remaining team member Daniel about the changes, he looked uncomfortable. The directive came from Diana directly. She said it was part of consolidating security functions under unified management. Aaron Johnson, a junior developer I had personally mentored from his first day now, barely acknowledged me in the hallways. When I invited him to coffee to catch up, he declined, citing meetings. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I later saw him laughing with Philip and Diana, clearly having found time in his schedule for some meetings but not others. After a board presentation where I was scheduled to present our security roadmap, I overheard Diana speaking with board member Jonathan Harris near the restrooms. "Jackie is brilliant technically, but lacks the strategic vision for where we need to go," she was saying. "Her methods worked for Tech Vista as a smaller company, but we need enterprise-scale thinking now." "The Secure Link protocol is still the core of our product offering," Jonathan responded. "Are you sure sidelining her is wise?" Diana laughed lightly. "The protocol is fully documented. We do not need the creator to maintain it indefinitely. Sometimes companies outgrow their early innovators." As my professional isolation increased, I began documenting every interaction, saving emails, recording meeting notes with timestamps, and keeping a detailed log of all project changes. What had started as a precautionary measure was becoming evidence of a systematic campaign to diminish my role and contribution. My growing suspicions were confirmed during a presentation to North Star Financial, our largest client. I had prepared extensive technical documentation for the meeting, but was informed at the last minute that Philip would be presenting instead. Relegated to technical support status, I sat silently as Philip presented my security architecture improvements as innovations from his new division, complete with slides I had created, but with my name removed from the footnotes. When North Star's chief information officer asked about implementation timelines, Philip confidently promised delivery dates that were technically impossible to meet. Before I could interject, Diana smoothly redirected the conversation to contract terms, effectively silencing my input. After nearly 2 months of this treatment, I reached out to Jennifer Bailey in Human Resources, hoping to find some institutional support. Jennifer had been with the company almost as long as I had, and had always maintained professional integrity. We met for coffee at a shop 3 blocks from the office to ensure privacy. "Everything you are describing is concerning," Jennifer acknowledged after listening to my account. "But I need to be candid with you, Jackie. Diana has the complete support of Thomas. Any formal complaint would land on her desk eventually, which could make your situation worse." "So there is nothing HR can do?" I asked, the last of my hope fading. Jennifer hesitated, then leaned forward. "Update your resume, Jackie. I wish I could say more, but please start looking at your options." Her expression conveyed what her words could not, and the message was clear: my position at Tech Vista was in jeopardy. That Friday afternoon, my calendar notification chimed with an unexpected addition, a meeting scheduled for 8:30 Monday morning with Diana and Jennifer, from HR, with the cryptic title Organizational Alignment Discussion. No agenda, no additional context, but the combination of participants told me everything I needed to know. I spent the weekend reviewing my employment contract, particularly the clauses regarding intellectual property rights, non-compete agreements, and severance terms. There was one unusual section Thomas had negotiated with me during our last major funding round, a clause designed to protect the company's intellectual property and investor interests. At the time, it had seemed like standard legal protection. Now it might prove to be much more significant. As Sunday evening approached, I prepared my home office, organizing important documents and ensuring my personal laptop was fully updated. Whatever happened Monday morning, I would be prepared. 9 years of loyalty and innovation were about to be rewarded with betrayal, but I was no longer naive enough to be surprised. I was, however, determined not to be defeated. Monday morning arrived with gray skies and a steady drizzle that matched my mood perfectly. I arrived at the office earlier than usual, wanting time to center myself before the meeting. The security guard at the front desk gave me a sympathetic look as I swiped my access card. "Morning, Miss Reynolds," he said with unusual formality, avoiding my eyes. At precisely 8:30, I entered conference room B to find Diana already seated at the head of the table, Jennifer from HR beside her, and a man I did not recognize in a dark suit. Legal representation, undoubtedly. The room felt unnaturally cold, its usual warmth replaced by sterile professionalism. Jennifer could not make eye contact, busying herself with organizing papers that did not need organizing. Diana, in contrast, maintained unbroken eye contact with the practiced sympathy of someone who had rehearsed, looking concerned. "Jackie, thank you for joining us." Diana began gesturing to an empty chair directly across from her. "This is Warren Blackwell from Legal. We have some organizational updates to discuss." I sat down, back straight, expression neutral, despite the pounding of my heart. 9 years of dedication deserved more than this sterile dismissal. "As you know, Tech Vista is evolving to meet changing market demands," Diana continued, sliding a folder across the table. "After careful evaluation of our organizational structure, we have made the difficult decision to eliminate your position as part of our strategic realignment." The words were expected but landed like physical blows nonetheless. Jennifer finally looked up, her expression apologetic but helpless. "Your termination is effective immediately," Diana continued. "We have prepared a severance package that includes 3 months of salary and benefits continuation contingent upon signing the standard release agreement." 3 months for 9 years. The insult was calculated in its inadequacy. Warren, the lawyer, cleared his throat. "The agreement includes standard confidentiality provisions and a comprehensive non-disparagement clause. We will need your signature before processing any severance payments." I opened the folder, scanning the densely worded legal document. "I will need time to review this properly." "Of course," Diana replied with artificial understanding, "but we would appreciate resolving this promptly, today if possible." Jennifer shifted uncomfortably. "Company policy allows 5 business days for review of separation agreements," she murmured. Diana shot her a look before turning back to me with a tight smile. "Naturally, we will honor the policy. However, immediate signature would allow us to process your payment sooner." The pressure tactic was transparent. I closed the folder without comment. "Your company laptop and access card will need to be surrendered before you leave today," Diana continued. "Jennifer will escort you to your desk to collect personal belongings." "Before we proceed," I said evenly, "may I ask the official reason for my termination, for clarity?" Diana and Warren exchanged glances. "Your position has been eliminated due to organizational restructuring," Warren stated. "The company is consolidating security functions under unified leadership to improve operational efficiency." "So, this is not performance-related?" "No," Jennifer quickly confirmed. "Your performance has been exemplary throughout your tenure. This is strictly an organizational decision." Diana nodded in agreement, though something flickered behind her eyes, a momentary irritation at this point being explicitly stated on record. "Now, if you will excuse us," Jackie, Diana said, standing to indicate our meeting was concluding. "I have another matter to attend to, but I would like a word with you privately in my office afterward, if you do not mind. Jennifer will handle the exit procedures." The formality of the whole process felt surreal after years of building this company from its early struggles to industry recognition. 9 years reduced to a 20-minute meeting and a manila folder. Jennifer escorted me to my desk, maintaining uncomfortable small talk as we walked through the open office. Colleagues watched from behind monitors, a few offering sympathetic glances, but most avoiding eye contact entirely. Jason, whom I had personally trained, suddenly needed something from the supply closet as we approached. The cowardice was almost more painful than the termination itself. "You have 15 minutes to collect personal items," Jennifer whispered as we reached my desk. "Company policy. I am so sorry, Jackie." I nodded, pulling out a cardboard box that had been conveniently placed beside my desk, another indication that this day had been planned well in advance. 9 years of professional life reduced to whatever would fit in a standard file box. As I placed framed certificates and personal items into the box, Sofia Martinez approached quickly, pressing a business card into my hand. "Call me," she whispered. "This is wrong, and everyone knows it." I slipped the card into my pocket with a grateful nod. With my meager box of possessions, I made my way to Diana's office as requested. Her assistant waved me in, immediately suggesting this impromptu conversation had been scheduled all along. Diana's office, formerly Thomas's space, had been completely redecorated. The warm wood and family photos had been replaced with sleek, minimalist furniture and abstract art. She gestured to a chair across from her imposing glass desk. "Jackie, I wanted to speak with you personally," she began, her voice softening to what she likely considered a compassionate tone. "These organizational decisions are never easy." "What exactly did you want to discuss?" I asked, not interested in prolonging this humiliation. "I wanted to offer some career advice," she said, leaning forward. "Your technical skills are solid, but smaller regional firms might be a better fit for your leadership style. Perhaps consider companies with less ambitious growth trajectories." The condescension was breathtaking. I said nothing, which Diana interpreted as an invitation to continue. "I understand this must feel disruptive after so many years, but truthfully, the company has evolved beyond its early development stage. The security protocols you created were appropriate for our previous scale, but enterprise-level operations require more sophisticated approaches." I finally broke my silence. The SecureLink protocol powers every product in our portfolio and is the primary reason Northstar and other enterprise clients chose TechVista. What exactly do you find insufficient about it? Diana's professional mask slipped momentarily, revealing the irritation beneath. "Let us be honest, your methods are outdated and unnecessarily complex. Philip has already identified several areas for streamlining." Philip has a marketing degree and zero experience in security architecture. Her eyes narrowed. "This attitude illustrates exactly why this transition is necessary. You are too emotionally invested in your creation to see its limitations." She stood walking to the window overlooking the city. "You know, Jackie, you really should consider this an opportunity. TechVista has been your entire career. Your protocols only exist within our ecosystem." Turning back to face me, her expression changed to something more genuine than anything I had seen before, a glimpse of the real Diana Richards. "Let me be clear. You are nothing without this company. Where else would you go? Your systems only work here." The statement hung in the air between us, the culmination of months of systematic undermining and professional isolation. In that moment, I saw Diana completely. A person whose confidence came not from competence, but from family connection and unearned privilege. I stood, picked up the severance agreement, and signed my name on the final page. Diana looked momentarily surprised, then satisfied, misinterpreting my action as surrender. What she failed to understand was that my signature was not defeat, but the first move in a game she did not realize we were playing. "I wish you luck, Diana," I said, quietly handing her the signed document. "You are going to need it." Confusion flickered across her face before her professional mask returned. "Security will escort you out. Standard protocol." A uniformed guard was already waiting outside her office, ready to walk me through the final humiliation of my departure. As we waited for the elevator, he spoke quietly. "For what it is worth, Miss Reynolds, everyone in security respects what you built here. This is not right." "Thank you, Robert," I replied, appreciating his small act of kindness. The walk through the lobby felt endless, colleagues and reception staff watching my exit with the uncomfortable fascination of witnesses to a car accident. Outside, the rain had stopped, but gray clouds still hung low over the city. In my car, I finally allowed the emotions to surface. 9 years of dedication, innovation, and loyalty dismissed in less than an hour. The betrayal stung not just because of Diana, but because Thomas had allowed it to happen. The mentor who had once championed me had stepped aside while his niece dismantled everything we had built together. As tears finally came, I reached for my phone and pulled out the business card Sophia had slipped me. But it was not Sophia's contact information on the card. Instead, it contained the direct line for Amanda Lawrence, managing partner at Helix Ventures, the lead investor from our Series C funding round 2 years ago. Wiping my eyes, I took a deep breath and started the car. This was not the end of my story with TechVista. It was merely the closing of one chapter and the beginning of another one that Diana Richards had inadvertently set in motion with her arrogance and nepotism. As I pulled away from the building that had been my professional home for nearly a decade, I felt something unexpected beneath the hurt and anger. Clarity, and with it the first stirrings of a plan. 6 months before my termination, I had first noticed troubling signs of Diana's management approach. During a company-wide meeting, she had presented a 5-year growth strategy that contradicted several foundational principles of our security architecture without addressing the technical implications. When I raised concerns afterward, she dismissed them as resistance to innovation, a phrase she would come to use frequently. That weekend, I contacted Nancy Rivera, a technology-focused attorney I had met at an industry conference. We met for brunch at a quiet restaurant far from the Tech Vista offices. Based on what you are describing, I recommend a comprehensive review of your employment contract and intellectual property agreements, Nancy advised after hearing my concerns. Executive transitions can often lead to unexpected challenges for key innovators. The following week, Nancy walked me through my original employment agreement and subsequent amendments made during various funding rounds. She pointed to a particularly unusual clause that had been added during our Series C financing. "This is interesting," she said, highlighting a section on page 17. "This clause was likely requested by your investors, not the company. It creates specific protections for the intellectual property underlying your security protocol." The language was dense with legal terminology, but Nancy explained the practical implications. Essentially, this creates a contingency that, if you are terminated without cause, the company cannot continue using your proprietary systems unless specific conditions are met, including appropriate compensation and attribution. "Is that enforceable?" I asked, surprised to discover this protection I had not fully understood when signing. "Very much so. The investors insisted on this because your protocol is central to the company valuation. They wanted to ensure its creator was properly treated." Nancy smiled. "Your early investors were quite forward-thinking." Over the next few weeks, I began creating meticulous documentation of everything related to the SecureLink protocol. I established encrypted backup repositories containing annotated code development history and implementation requirements. Each file was carefully timestamped and notarized through Nancy's firm to establish clear provenance. 3 months before my termination, I received an unexpected message from James Wilson, Chief Technology Officer at Keystone Dynamics, one of Tech Vista's competitors. We had met at several industry conferences and maintained professional respect for each other's work. "I would appreciate your perspective on some industry developments," his message read. "Perhaps we could meet at the Technology Summit next week." Under normal circumstances, I might have declined out of loyalty to Tech Vista. But Diana's systematic undermining of my position had created legitimate concerns about my professional future. I agreed to meet James for coffee during the conference. "I will be direct," Jackie James said once we were seated in a quiet corner of the conference center cafe. "Keystone has been following your work with the SecureLink protocol for years. We would be interested in discussing possibilities for bringing that innovation to our platform with appropriate compensation and leadership opportunities for you." "I appreciate the interest," I replied carefully, "but I am currently under contract with Tech Vista and take those obligations seriously." James nodded respectfully. "Of course. However, should your situation change, I hope you will keep our conversation in mind. The offer remains open." I maintained strict ethical boundaries during this and subsequent conversations with James. No confidential information was shared, no specific technical details discussed, and no commitments made. These were preliminary conversations about theoretical future possibilities, nothing more. Now, sitting in my home office the evening after my termination, those conversations took on new significance. The non-compete clause in my contract had standard restrictions but contained important exceptions for situations involving termination without cause, exactly my current circumstance. My phone rang, displaying Sophia's name. "Jackie, are you okay?" she asked immediately. "As well as can be expected. Thank you for Amanda's card. I thought you should have direct contact with the investors. Things are already going sideways here without you." The development team tried implementing Philip's streamlined authentication process this afternoon and crashed the entire test environment. They have been trying to restore from backup for 3 hours. I was not surprised. Philip's proposed changes had fundamentally misunderstood the architectural dependencies within the system. Diana is in full panic mode, Sophia continued. She told everyone it is just a minor setback, but the testing deadline for the North Star implementation is Friday. Nobody knows how to fix what Philip broke. As if summoned by our conversation, my phone beeped with another call. This one from North Star Financial's Chief Information Officer, Rachel Thompson. I promised to call Sophia back and switched to the incoming call. Jackie, I just heard about your departure from Tech Vista, Rachel said, skipping preliminaries. What the hell is going on over there? We have a major security implementation scheduled to go live in 3 weeks. I cannot comment on internal Tech Vista matters, I replied carefully. However, I understand your concern given the timeline. Diana assured me the transition would be seamless, but we just received notification of potential delays. Our entire regulatory compliance strategy depends on this implementation. Rachel's frustration was evident. You built this system. Who is managing it now? I believe Philip Anderson is now heading security architecture, I answered, keeping my tone neutral despite the absurdity. The marketing guy, Rachel's disbelief came through clearly. This is unacceptable. I am calling Thomas directly. After Rachel's call, I spent the evening reviewing the documents Nancy had helped me prepare. The investor protection clause was even more significant than I had initially realized. It specifically stated that termination of the principal architect of core security systems would trigger a review of intellectual property usage rights by the lead investors. My email pinged with a message from Nancy confirming what I had suspected. The non-compete clause is unenforceable given the circumstances of your termination. Additionally, the investor protection clause is actionable immediately. How would you like to proceed? As I considered my response, another call came through, this one from Jennifer in HR. I probably should not be telling you this, she began without preamble, but I was just let go too. What happened? I asked, surprised. Diana is cleaning house. Anyone perceived as loyal to the old guard is being pushed out. She told the board you left voluntarily due to creative differences about future direction. Thomas is barely involved anymore, completely checked out. This information confirmed my growing suspicion that Diana was systematically removing anyone who might challenge her authority or question her decisions. The technical reality that Diana and Philip failed to understand was that the SecureLink protocol was not simply a product feature, but the essential foundation of the entire Tech Vista ecosystem. Every application, every client implementation, and every data security promise depended on the architecture I had designed. Philip's clumsy attempts to streamline the system demonstrated a fundamental ignorance of these dependencies. After considering my options carefully, I made the call I had been contemplating since receiving James's business card months earlier. James, this is Jackie Reynolds. My situation has changed. I would like to discuss that position now. I am very glad to hear from you, he replied. How about breakfast tomorrow, to discuss details? As we finalized plans to meet, I noticed an alert on my laptop showing Tech Vista's stock price. It had dropped 3% in afternoon trading, following rumors of development delays with a major client implementation. It was just the beginning of what would become a much more significant decline. 1 week after my termination, I sat in the executive conference room at Keystone Dynamics, reviewing implementation plans for integrating a new security architecture. James Wilson had moved with remarkable speed, offering me the position of Chief Security Officer with creative control over technological direction equity in the company, and a salary package double what I had been earning at Tech Vista. The board unanimously approved your appointment, James explained as we reviewed the contract. Your reputation in the security field speaks for itself, and frankly, Tech Vista's loss is our extraordinary gain. The press release announcing my new role went live that afternoon, causing immediate ripples throughout the industry. Technology blogs and financial news sites ran headlines questioning what the move meant for Tech Vista's security leadership and product stability. That evening, I listened to a voicemail from Diana that had come through while I was in meetings. Her tone attempted professional courtesy but could not completely mask the underlying panic. Jackie, Diana Richards calling. I hope your transition is going smoothly. There are some outstanding documentation matters regarding your previous projects that would be helpful to clarify. Perhaps we could schedule a brief consultation. Compensated, of course. Please call me at your earliest convenience. I did not return the call. Instead, I forwarded the message to Nancy, who had already sent a formal letter to TechVista, invoking the investor protection clause from my contract. The letter outlined in precise technical detail which components of the SecureLink protocol were covered under my intellectual property provisions and the specific limitations on TechVista's continued usage rights. 3 days later, the first major system failures began at TechVista. Without my expertise to maintain the complex security architecture, Philip's team had implemented changes that created cascading failures throughout the integrated systems. The monitoring dashboard I still had access to through an investor portal showed multiple critical alerts and downtime notifications. Rachel Thompson from North Star Financial called again, this time to inform me of their concerns about TechVista's capability to maintain service levels. We have open discussions with other vendors, she mentioned carefully. I would be interested to know more about Keystone's security implementations once you are settled in your new role. I maintained professional boundaries, neither disparaging TechVista nor directly soliciting North Star's business. I did not need to. Rachel was experienced enough to read between the lines of the situation. Diana's increasingly desperate attempts to reach me escalated from voicemails to emails with subject lines like urgent system architecture consultation, and finally, to a text message that simply read, "We need to talk. Name your price." Meanwhile, at Keystone, I began building a security team that included several talented engineers from across the industry. The work environment James had created valued technical excellence and innovation without the corporate politics that had poisoned TechVista. For the first time in months, I felt professionally energized rather than drained. 2 weeks after my appointment at Keystone, I received an unexpected call from Amanda Lawrence, the managing partner at Helix Ventures, who had led TechVista's Series C funding round. The investor board has called an emergency meeting, she informed me. Thomas has been asked to return to active management immediately. Diana's leadership has created significant concerns about the company's technical stability. I am sorry to hear about the difficulties, I responded neutrally. Jackie, I will be direct. The protection clause in your contract was activated by your termination. Our investment was predicated substantially on the value of the security architecture you developed. The current situation represents a material change in the company's asset profile. According to Amanda, Thomas had been shocked to learn the full circumstances of my departure. Apparently, Diana had characterized it as a mutually agreed separation rather than a termination, hiding the potential implications for intellectual property rights and system stability. The following day, industry news sites reported that multiple TechVista developers had submitted their resignations simultaneously. Daniel Williams, Lisa Martinez, and 3 other senior engineers from my former team announced they were leaving. Though I had not directly recruited them, Keystone quickly extended offers to each of them, recognizing the rare opportunity to acquire exceptional talent. By the 3rd week after my departure, TechVista's technical problems had escalated to crisis level. The fusion protocol that powered their security architecture was experiencing critical failures that Philip's team could not resolve. Thomas had returned from his semi-retirement to find a company in technical freefall. News broke that North Star Financial had officially terminated their contract with TechVista, citing unresolvable concerns about system stability and security protocol maintenance. The contract represented $50 million in annual recurring revenue, approximately 30% of TechVista's yearly income. The stock dropped 28% in a single trading day. Thomas reached out personally, his voice carrying the weight of his miscalculation. Jackie, I owe you an apology. Would you be willing to meet for dinner to discuss the situation? I agreed to meet at a quiet restaurant downtown the following evening. Thomas looked older than when I had last seen him, new lines etched around his eyes and mouth. I made a terrible mistake, he admitted after we had ordered. I believed Diana was ready for leadership responsibility. I wanted to begin my transition to retirement and thought family succession made sense. I never imagined she would dismantle what we built together. Did you know she planned to terminate my position? I asked directly. Thomas shook his head. She told me you were dissatisfied and looking for new challenges. I only learned the truth when system failures began, and Amanda from Helix started asking pointed questions about intellectual property rights. He pushed his food around his plate. Diana has been removed from operational control, the board insisted. I am back temporarily trying to stabilize the situation, but the damage. He trailed off, looking out the window. What about Philip and the others she brought in? Gone as of yesterday. We are trying to rebuild the security team, but most of your people have already accepted positions elsewhere. He looked directly at me. I do not suppose there is any chance you would consider coming back. The company needs you, Jackie. The irony of the moment was not lost on me. After months of being systematically pushed aside and ultimately discarded, I was now being asked to rescue the very company that had betrayed me. The request came too late. I had already signed a contract with Keystone and had ethical obligations to my new employer. I am sorry, Thomas. That is not possible. He nodded unsurprised. I understand. I would make the same choice in your position. As we finished our meal, Thomas shared that the company was considering strategic options, including a possible sale. The Secure Link protocol issues, combined with the loss of Northstar's contract, had created a financial situation that might not be recoverable independently. Diana never understood that what you built was not just code, but the heart of our value proposition, Thomas said as we parted. By the time I realized what was happening, it was too late. The business news cycle over the following weeks documented what industry analysts were calling the Tech Vista implosion. Additional clients followed Northstar's lead in terminating contracts, citing concerns about security architecture stability. The stock continued its downward trajectory, losing over 60% of its value from its peak before my departure. Meanwhile, at Keystone, we were building something remarkable. With the team of talented engineers who had followed me from Tech Vista, we developed an enhanced security framework that incorporated the best elements of my previous work while addressing limitations and adding new capabilities. The contrast between the toxic environment Diana had created and the collaborative culture at Keystone could not have been more stark. Where she had used intimidation and isolation, James fostered open communication and recognized contributions. Where Philip had dismissed technical concerns for quick wins, our new team took the time to build solutions properly with long-term stability in mind. 6 weeks after my departure from Tech Vista, the final chapter in their story was written. A press release announced that Global Tech Partners had acquired Tech Vista for 22% of its valuation from just 3 months earlier. Thomas was retiring completely, and the company would be folded into Global Tech's enterprise division, effectively ending the independent existence of the company I had helped build. Diana, I later heard through industry connections, had been relegated to managing a small regional office for one of her uncle's lesser companies, her ambitions of executive leadership thoroughly derailed by the consequences of her actions. The nepotism that had given her unearned authority had ultimately backfired in the most public and definitive way possible. As I welcomed the last group of new hires to orientation at Keystone, including several former Tech Vista employees, I reflected on the journey that had brought us all to this point. The betrayal had been painful, but the outcome had created something better than what had been destroyed. Sometimes corporate nepotism contains the seeds of its own destruction, and in this case the collapse had been as spectacular as it was unnecessary. 6 months after leaving Tech Vista, I stood in the gleaming innovation lab at Keystone Dynamics, watching my team demonstrate our new enhanced security framework to a group of impressed industry analysts. The architecture incorporated the core strengths of my earlier work, with significant advancements that addressed evolving security challenges. The encryption throughput numbers are unprecedented, remarked one analyst studying the performance metrics on the main display. How did you achieve this without compromising security protocols? I smiled, gesturing to Lisa and Daniel, who had followed me from Tech Vista. Collaborative innovation. Every person on this team contributed critical insights to solve problems that would have been insurmountable for any individual working alone. This approach represented the most significant difference between my leadership philosophy and Diana's authoritarian style. Where she had concentrated power and taken credit for others' work, I made sure every team member's contribution was recognized and valued. The results spoke for themselves in both technical performance and team morale. James had given me complete freedom to structure the security division according to my vision, and I had built it on principles of transparency, technical excellence, and mutual respect. Weekly architecture reviews welcomed input from every level of the organization. Junior developers were paired with experienced engineers in mentoring relationships that benefited both. Challenging technical problems became opportunities for collaborative problem-solving rather than sources of blame. The enhanced security framework we developed had already been implemented by 3 major financial institutions, including North Star, who had transitioned their entire security infrastructure to our platform. Our approach addressed vulnerabilities that competitors had ignored, positioning Keystone as the new industry leader in data protection. During a technology conference in San Francisco, I encountered Aaron Johnson, the junior developer I had mentored at Tech Vista, who had distanced himself from me during Diana's campaign to isolate me. "Jackie, do you have a moment?" he asked tentatively as I was leaving a panel discussion. We found a quiet corner in the convention center lobby. Aaron looked nervous, fidgeting with his conference badge. "I want to apologize for how everything happened at Tech Vista," he began. "I should have stood by you after everything you taught me. I was afraid of losing my job, but that is no excuse." "What happened after I left?" I asked, curious about his perspective. "Complete chaos. The systems started failing within days. Philip had no idea how anything actually worked, but kept making changes anyway. Diana kept insisting everything was fine, even as clients were calling about outages." He shook his head. "When Thomas came back, he tried to salvage things, but it was too late. Most of us were laid off when Global Tech acquired what was left." "Where are you working now?" "Nowhere yet. The Tech Vista collapse is not exactly a great reference." His expression was pained. "I came to the conference hoping to make connections." I considered his situation. Aaron had made a mistake born of inexperience and fear, but he had also been a promising developer with good instincts. Everyone deserved a second chance. "Send your resume to me directly," I told him. "We are expanding the security implementation team. I cannot promise anything, but we can talk." His relief was palpable. "Thank you, Jackie. I would not waste the opportunity." 2 weeks later, an industry publication ran a feature story about Tech Vista's final dissolution into Global Tech Partners. The article included quotes from several former executives, including Thomas, who candidly attributed the company's downfall to catastrophic leadership mistakes and failure to properly value key technical talent. Without naming Diana directly, the implication was clear to anyone familiar with the company's history. Thomas sent me a personal email that included a copy of his final letter to Tech Vista investors. In it, he took full responsibility for the company's collapse, acknowledging his error in promoting family connection over demonstrated capability. "The hardest lesson of my career has been learning that companies are not family heirlooms to be passed down regardless of merit," he wrote. "By the time I recognized my mistake, the damage was irreparable." The security architecture that was our core value proposition collapsed when we lost its creator through short-sighted personnel decisions. The letter contained a formal acknowledgement of my contribution to Tech Vista's earlier success, a belated recognition that could not undo the past but offered some measure of professional vindication. As Keystone continued to grow, I established a mentoring program specifically for women in security engineering, hoping to create pathways for talented people who might otherwise be overlooked or undervalued. The program quickly became oversubscribed, revealing the significant untapped potential within the industry. My perspective on professional loyalty had evolved through this experience. I now recognize that while commitment to an organization's mission remains important, blind loyalty can become self-destructive. True loyalty must be reciprocal, based on mutual respect and recognition of value. When that balance is compromised, maintaining professional self-worth requires the courage to move forward. The financial aspects of my transition had exceeded expectations. Keystone's equity package had already appreciated significantly as our security division drove company growth. Industry recognition through speaking engagements and technical publications enhanced both personal and corporate reputation. Most importantly, I had regained the creative freedom to pursue innovation without artificial constraints or political obstruction. Perhaps the most unexpected benefit was the improvement in work-life balance. Without the constant defensive posture required in the toxic environment Diana had created, I rediscovered energy for interests outside work. I resumed the photography hobby I had abandoned during the stressful final months at Tech Vista and joined a weekend hiking group where I formed friendships entirely separate from the technology world. 1 year after my departure from Tech Vista, I delivered the keynote address at the National Security Technology Summit, speaking to an audience that included many of the industry's most influential leaders and innovators. Security architecture is fundamentally about understanding dependencies and connections, I told the audience. The same principle applies to organizations. When we fail to recognize the interdependencies between people processes and technology systems, fail whether those systems are code or companies. I shared the lessons from my experience without naming Tech Vista, specifically focusing on the positive outcomes and growth opportunities that can emerge from professional challenges. Your value is not defined by any single organization, position, or person's opinion, I concluded. It exists independently in the expertise you develop, the relationships you build, and the integrity with which you conduct your career. True security, both in systems and in professional life, comes from understanding your core value and ensuring it is properly recognized and protected. The standing ovation that followed represented more than professional appreciation. It signified the completion of a journey from betrayal to renewed purpose, from undermining to empowerment. Diana's dismissive words, "You are nothing without this company," had proven to be precisely backwards. In the end, it was the company that could not survive without the value I had created. Have you ever faced workplace nepotism or felt your contributions were being deliberately undermined? How did you handle it? Your experiences might help someone else navigating a similar situation. Hit that like button if this story resonated with you, and consider subscribing for more real-life corporate lessons. Remember, no matter what challenges you face, your professional worth exists independently of any single workplace or manager's opinion. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own career journey.